just wanted to really make sure we didn't go nuts with the blood just because we could. I think I was probably pushing it a little bit more. They probably would love to say this, like, all I wanted was blood. That's technically not true. I just when he kills that one daughter of the coup in the blood, it needs to be a shocking moment.
Yeah.
So I just pushed it. Like I went like old school samurai movie. When he cuts it, it just goes like sprays along the wall, and we're linger on her for a while as she like and then goes, and we can see the blood just starting to just slowly drip on the wall. Then you see here the deck, and then the blood is spilling out over the stuff. He was just like, it just goes on too long, dude. Let's pull it back. Let's save it for the pooling. That's all we just need to see it fly, and we go blood for the first time, and then it hits, and then we see it pool, and it's like, okay. But at least he didn't take out the other stuff, because then he's wounded, and the shots of his hand along the wall and stuff like that, and leaving the blood trail, all that stuff was very important to me. So all he did was just make sure that this mega Shogun assassin style spray, because I love those old Lone Wolf and Cub 70s movies. It's like we watched that shit to death back in when we were young, and we fucking love it. So that was almost like an homage to that, but it was just a little too much at that moment for Gendy. So he pulled that thing back, and it's cool. But there's so much in there that we finally were able to do, that we were just chomping at the bit all the time to like do, it's like so cool.
Hey guys, it's your host Julian. This week I sit down with one of my favorite storyboard artists of all time, Mr. Brian Andrews. This one was a long time coming. I've been a fan of Brian since I was a little kid, and I really didn't even know it back then. I mean, Samurai Jack. You guys know how much I feel and just care for this show. So that alone, I mean, he's got G14 classification for the rest of his life just by working on that show. We talk about Samurai Jack, obviously. We talk with Gendy. We do a little bit of Hotel Transylvania talk. And, of course, we talk just very briefly about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what he's done on there. I didn't want to go too deep into that because I figured we could have spent an entire episode, maybe even 2 or 3, just on the Marvel stuff alone. I hope you guys enjoy, and if you guys are liking the show, tell a friend, and don't forget, give us a 5-star rating. That helps so much. Thank you guys for listening. I truly appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to What's in My Head podcast. I'm your host, Julian, and today I'm joined by Mr. Brian Andrews. Brian, how are you, sir?
Good. How you doing, man?
Oh, fantastic. Dude, this has been one chat that I have been it's been sitting in a pot on the stove just simmering for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years now, ever since I talked to Robert Alvarez, one of my favorite people. The fans have heard it so many times. A national treasure, Robert Alvarez. Brought you up and talked to you up, and then I've had many talks with Randy Myers as well, and he's brought your name up, and there's been quite a few people that have dropped your name. So I'm excited that we're finally getting to do this. So keep it in the tradition. For the last couple of weeks, we've been doing podcasts with Cartoon Network family. So when you hear that term, like I said, we just passed the 30-year anniversary a couple of weeks ago for Cartoon Network. When you hear that term, Cartoon Network, man, what's the first thought that comes to mind?
Samurai Jack.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
But before that, obviously, Dexter's Laboratory and, Powerpuff Girls and all that stuff, because those guys were doing that, it helped really Cow and Chicken, all those things that came out of that shorts kind of, program, I guess, back when they were all in that Hanna-Barbera, the old school Hanna-Barbera, lot, the studio, yeah, those are like a bunch of classmates of mine, and they were over there doing that stuff. And next thing you know, they're over in Burbank in that building, and they've got stuff. And I forget how I heard, but again, he was doing a new show. Like someone else was going to be doing some of the Dexter stuff. He was going to start up the Samurai Jack thing, and I totally forget like the details. It's crazy. Time goes, the memory goes. But I just remember at some point, I don't know if like my older brother Mark had visited or was talking to him. Anyways, there was something going on, and it was just like, oh yeah, again, he's doing the Samurai Jack thing. It's like this thing, and they were like, oh, we should get you guys to do it, because they would like have board artists. Some guys were on staff, but they needed stuff done with the first season. They'd freelance stuff out, and they knew from college and from our things we were doing outside of college that were like full on action guys and just bored dudes, whatever. Like we can do whatever. This is right up our alley. And so I think we went in and talked to Gendy for a second, and he was just kind of like, yeah, man, you guys want to do a freaking episode with me? I'm like, and then we can do like whatever the fuck we want. He says, well, yeah, here's like the idea for the episode, and you can roll with it. And they had some preliminary artwork. It was the Blind Archers episode. And they had some preliminary artwork that Dan Crawl, like a genius, did just to understand a little hint of some of the imagery. And he showed us like the test that Genndy and company had put together, the proof of concept. Like, yeah, we want the stylized stuff, and it's really wacky, and then all this cool stuff, and it's so designy, and then in his test, he's doing different aspect ratios and popping and doing some of the anime sliding, trick, all that shit. He's like, it's like whatever you need, whenever you need it. It's like the entire grab bag of cinema is yours to play with. And we were like, fuck yeah. Because, by that point, we've been working for other places. And there's always like, different people above us that have different opinions. And, you're trying your best to make things cool. But sometimes the bosses above you don't know how to be cool, right? So, but here's Genndy, and we've known him from college and everything. And he's allowing us to go fucking nuts. So Mark and I said, hell yeah, let's do this. This is so fucking hilarious. So we boarded the thing. We worked together, we boarded it, we split up in a couple sections, and like he was taking one section, we talked about the story, what we wanted to do fully. And we boarded it, and you've probably heard it, but you go and you got 4 weeks to rough it, and then you go and you pitch it, hang it all up, and you pitch it live to everybody. And then he gives your notes, and then you have 4 weeks to tie it down and get it in your little storyboard, pages and stuff like that. And there you go. And it was hilarious because Genndy just like I went ape shit. It was like, there really wasn't any notes, not really. And he basically said, this is Samurai Jack. This is what I've been trying to tell you guys. You know what I mean? And we were just like, fuck yeah. And he's like, you guys got to do another one. And so another one we did was also in season 1. And he came up with the idea just for us. It was the Scotsman episode, because he knew we cling tightly to the wafer thin thread of Scottish ancestry that we have. We're like total Euro mutts, and there's probably like very little to none Scottish, but we're like, even if there's 0.01%, that's 100% of who we want to align ourselves to is Scotland. So, and we have like kilts and everything. Mark got married in a kilt and everything. So, and again, he knew all this, so he created the Scotsman character basically as this mega version of Mark in some ways. And so we came in and did a pitch for that, and we split up. So we would tag team our pitches, right? So when we're pitching, I'm Jack, and Mark's a Scotsman, and Mark is way even louder than I am. So yeah, Genndy was just Genndy to this day will be like, fuck, why didn't I? He usually would record the pitches just in case he needs to go back and check something. But for whatever reason, those initial 2 ones we did, either he doesn't have the tape or he just never recorded those. But it kills him too, because it's like that was me and him tag teaming it, and Mark saying all the lines like totally in a Scottish brogue and just like bellowing and screaming, and I'm being like Jack, and I'm totally like Steely, because I'm doing my best Phil Lamar impression, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But people were laughing their asses off. And in that board, Genndy had like fucking 2 notes only. And one was just like, let's be just a tiny bit wider on this shot. And on this shot, let's just be like a tiny bit tighter or something. Like the most superfluous, whatever, totally. Yeah, no problem. It's fucking fine. There was nothing, so he fucking loved it. And from that point on, then I came on full time from season 2 all through the rest to work on a bunch. And then Mark would freelance out like maybe like 2 other boards. I think Mark did the Scotsman's Wife all on his own, and he did Demongo all on his own. Otherwise, I was paired with another good buddy of ours. I brought a friend in, Brian Larson, who worked on he was doing animation on Iron Giant. And then eventually he came over, and he was young. He was also out of Cal Arts, and then he came over eventually, and got hooked up with me over when I was doing Jackie Chan Adventures, or actually Men in Black over there for Sony TV, because we needed some good board people. And he was doing that switch from animation to boards, and was like, I need somebody, dude. So I kind of like trained him to do that stuff, and he was an avid learner and totally hipping with it. So he picked it up fast. So he's been my right hand guy.
Yeah.
And I was with him for Jackie Chan Adventures. And then when it came time to do the Samurai Jack stuff, they do partnerships of 2, and 2 guys like attack a board or whatever. So I was like, Larson, get over here with me. And so he would always be my guy, and we'd do those episodes, those other Samurai Jack episodes together. So It was awesome. But yeah, that so when you mentioned Cartoon Network, a lot of stuff comes to mind. You know what I mean? Just a lot of things, and all the people that were working there on all those other shows at the time. You know, it's just, you know, it was great. It was a special time. You know.
There's a couple things I want to circle back to, and I've done this a couple times, man. But I'm so glad you brought up the Iron Giant. My first tattoo was actually the Iron Giant, and excuse my no must have an ass here, and I don't know if you can really see it.
Yeah, man.
It's him sitting there on the
Yeah,
mountain.
yeah, yeah.
First time I got it, I showed my buddy at work. He's like, "Is the Iron Giant taking a shit?" I was like, "No, dude, he's just taking a break on the mountainside." He's like, "No, he's taking a shit." I was like, "Fuck you, man." And I got really upset. I walked in the walk and I was like, "Oh man," I just wanted to punch some shit. But yeah, man, that movie is so special. Favorite animated movie, in my opinion. When it comes to animated movies, that's the bar. Everything else really is just trying to meet. There's other movies out there that I think up there, and they also happen to be, you know, done by Brad Bird, Ratatouille being one, The Incredibles being the other one. You know, it's a very special movie.
Yeah,
but swinging back to a couple of things you just mentioned, man. When I had Andy on, whenever I have somebody on, I was like, "Hey, I've got such and such coming on. Any stories that I should bring up or anything that I should ask them?" And he was like, "You might like this. It might just be something for throwaway." But you know, he brought up your kilt, and he was like, "Yeah, the Andrew brothers, they're really big into kilts." And he's like, "I think it was Mark. They got married, and you know, you confirmed that story." He's like, "Mark got married in his kilt and everything like that." So he's like, "He might bring it up, he might not." But he's like, "Just know he was always over the place." And I think I'd have to go back and actually look at what he said. He was like, "I'm not sure if he wore underpants underneath his kilt." And he was like, it might be something you want to ask. It might not be something you want to ask. He's like, "It's up to you." I'd have to scroll back and look, and I'll send it over to you once we get off here. I'll send you a little screenshot of the stuff. But yeah, he had the first thing he brought up. He's like, Brian's kilt.
Yeah, no, it's true, dude. I mean, technically, you don't wear anything under your kilt unless you're doing athletics. So there could be proper decorum. So even in the old days when they would wear kilts into battle, it's just like you're not supposed to be wearing nothing. But if you're doing the Highland Games and you happen to fall over in front of a crowd, you don't want to show off. You want to have some sense of decorum. So, but you know,
need them bangers and mash out.
yeah, exactly. So no, that's true. That's freaking hilarious. Yeah, when my bro got married, they also they honeymooned out in Scotland for a month.
Ooh,
and
nice.
later on when Mark was you know, working on Brave, and the Brave was going to come out, and they did all the stuff like in Scotland and all these other things, you know. You know, they did it, you know, for Pixar and everything. They'd go and like look at the land and, you know, do their inspirational tours and stuff like that. So Mark basically kind of followed the same path that he did when, you know, they were out there for their honeymoon. And, you know, they had at the time, you know, the acting prime minister of, you know, Scotland. And Mark told him the story of being out there for a month and that whole thing. And what it was is, as soon as they got off the plane and they get the first cabbie they get, usually, you know, the cabbie's like super friendly and super cool. It's just like, you know, where are you from? Blah, blah. They're like, from the US, and you know, we don't know where we're going. We want to see the best stuff, but not just like touristy shit. We want to see, like, we're here for a month. He's like, "Oh my God." And he pulls over and he pulls out a map and he spends like this chunk of time basically, you got to do this, you got to go here, you got to see this, you got to go to like this, like, you know, pub, you got to go to all this stuff. And he basically laid out a thing, and they followed that to a T. And like it was the most amazing trip ever. So he told the prime minister that, and Mark was giving such huge props. It's like, you know, your countrymen. It's like, you know, it was so, they embraced us so much. It was one of your guys, just random real Scotsman, just put together this thing for us. And so apparently now officially, like somehow Scotland off, like, I don't know, on some official website, something like, they point out that that tour. I don't know what's called. I don't know how you find it. But the guy was just like over the moon over Mark, and like how he was giving such props and the true story of how, and I took the Pixar guys there, and I was like, all of this is because of that one fucking guy. And so it made the dude really happy. So it's amazing, you know, how something so small can eventually turn into something much bigger. You know, it's crazy.
It really is, man. And thank you for sharing that. And I found that note from Andy. So on a personal note, Brian is not afraid to wear his family's tartan kilt. I apologize if I pronounced that name incorrectly at formal ceremonies such as the Emmys and Annie Awards. Since I'm a bit of a prude, seeing him always made me uncomfortable, knowing he was most likely wasn't wearing any underpants, keeping in tradition. I suppose you can ask him if he does or does not wear underpants when wearing his kilt? Question mark.
Yes, that is true.
But that's all I got. Huge respect for Brian Andrews. So much skill, experience, and knowledge. And that's from Andy Bjalk. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, no, Andy Bjalk's awesome. You know what's funny is too, because back in the day, he was like a skater.
Mm-hmm. Still is. He's still shredding.
That's amazing. But his hair was like epic long. Like he showed me, I'm like, dude, I've got hair envy, because like when you were a teen, I wanted that hair, goddamn it. And like I wasn't allowed, but you were, and that's awesome. I remember once I was like working really late doing like a freelance board for Powerpuff Girls. I think I did like 1 or 2 boards for Powerpuff Girls because we were in between. It wasn't, maybe it was like after Jack, and maybe it was like before Simba and like Titan started up or something. There was something where there's like a little bit of lag time. So I like did one of these boards. Anyways, it was late one night. I had to finish it. So I'm out there at Cartoon Network in my little fucking bullpen downstairs and stuff. You know, I was out, didn't have an office anymore. I'm just in some random fucking cubicle next to people. But no one was around except Andy Bjalk, who was working like a number of rows, like way in the distance in some big room. Anyway, but I didn't know that anyone else was around. I thought I was there alone. So I was just having my speakers out loud without hearing any headphones. I'm just playing fucking metal, you know, like fucking good old school shit, you know, whether it's Maiden, you know, Kiss, Halen, Metallica, just whatever, just like, you know, Ozzy, you know, Randy Rhoads style, or, you know, Jakey Lee, just, you know, fun, cool shit that I dig.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was doing that for like a few hours to like finish up my shit. And then when I was finally done, I'm packing up my stuff. You can hear like, so here comes Andy Bjalk walking around the corner. And he's just like, dude, that playlist, man, because he was over there working too, just listening to whatever I was pumping out. And he was just like, man, Brock, it's back so many memories, man. Like that's like all the shit I like love. And like I was like, dude, but he like gave me like honest thanks. And I'm like, you can listen to any of that stuff at any time. Why was this? Because it was unexpected, man. It's like, here I am working late and this is really annoying. And then I start hearing all this fucking kick-ass rock coming from over the other side. It's like, yeah, man, thank you. I'm like, thanks, man.
Hey guys, it's your resident cartoon junkie Brandon Jones here, asking you to have a listen to my Animation Destination podcast. It's an animation celebration podcast, and it's full of all sorts of stuff about anime and cartoons and voice acting and all that sort of thing, and just a really all-around celebration of anything animated. So come on by and check it out. We've got fan episodes of your favorite animes to your most obscure cartoons on Netflix that no one's ever heard of, and just really love talking about it. You can subscribe to us on Spotify and iTunes and anywhere else you can get your podcasts from. So stop on by, subscribe, and stay tuned for the Animation Destination podcast.
It's so nice that he pointed that out and appreciated it, you know.
That's really cool, man. He was awesome. One of my favorite guests I've had on, because he, like you, he had been somebody I'd been chasing for quite some time. And I keep saying this in a non-stalkery fashion, chasing you guys and gals, because you guys mean so much to me. You know, I've said this on so many occasions, on so many episodes, man. You guys gave people like me something to talk about with my friends. You guys helped me make friends because of the shows I watched. You know, shows like Dexter. You know, that was the show I remember sitting down there and watching when it premiered. I was like, this is different. This is, like, I'm a redheaded dude, so I see this. I was like, you didn't really see too many other redheaded characters and shit. You know, growing up, I had Matt Murdock, huge Daredevil fan. I had Matt Murdock, right? I had, you know, fucking Shaun White. I had Carrot Top, of all people. I grew to hate Carrot Top without knowing who Carrot Top was. And then when I get a little bit older, I see him on the Comedy Central roast of Flavor Flav. I'm probably 14 years old, right? At the time. So shit, this is going back 18 years almost. I think I can't do math. I suck at it, but 33 now, whatever 14 was back then, 19 years. But I remember seeing this, and he's like, look, man, I found, you know, Snoop Dogg's first stick up tape, and it's just him rolling out this van, and it was a VCR popping out of a van. I'm like, oh, dude, this dude Carrot Top is funny as shit. I don't even know why I hated this guy, other than I got called Carrot Top every single day. You know, so it was just, I see these characters like Dexter. I see these shows like Powerpuff Girls. I see the show like Samurai Jack. And I've said it on so many occasions, I could not have appreciated the beauty that Samurai Jack was at 12 years old when I watched it for the first time. No fucking way. And if I would have said I could at 12 years old, I wish I could go back in time and slap the taste out of my mouth at 12 years old. Makes no fucking way. I told this story with Randy and Robert, but I'll tell you as well. So last year we just had our second kid. July 1st is when he was born. So you've got kids yourself. So I'm pretty sure you've went through kind of like the whole the shuck and jive thing too, right? So whenever you're getting your kid ready for bed, right? So you get him a bath and then your wife gets in the shower, you get in the shower, and then you're with the baby reading them a story or her a story. And then you're just trying to do stuff so everybody else can kind of trade off and do what they need to do. Well, while that was happening, I would usually have him while the wife was in the shower. And then I was watching an episode of Samurai Jack a night. Right. And I rewatched the entire series, probably for the first time in 20 years, almost, maybe give or take a few years. And I remember watching it. Not only did I not remember some of the key points like you would, like you wouldn't remember 20 years later. But it was just, I remember just watching and being blown away and thinking like, man, was this the same fucking show I watched as a little kid? And I go to realize like, yeah, it was the same exact show. It's just you were too inexperienced to understand what was really happening.
Right.
Like I told you before we hit record, Genndy is the bar when it comes to animators for me, right? He's always been my favorite. But seeing Samurai Jack and then seeing Symbiotic Titan and then seeing fucking Primal, it's just like every single property he's ever had, it goes up a notch. It goes up a notch. It goes up a notch. Then everybody else is just chasing this guy. But sticking on Samurai Jack for just a few, man. When you do that test, you mentioned the Three Blind Archers. Phenomenal episode. I mean, just seeing the close-up, seeing peril in Jack's eyes without him evoking any kind of words, right? Just forced. Like I didn't know that I was watching a show that had very little dialogue, right? I was just on the edge of my seat the entire time as a kid.
Yeah, you're just following the story,
That's
visual storytelling. Yeah,
absolutely, right? So seeing that and then seeing the Scotsman for the first, like anytime I see him, I fucking crack up laughing like most people do. He's just a fun fucking character.
The design is so hilarious. Like when they showed us the design, it's like, and here's the guy. We're like, oh, fuck. Like the Sporin, it's the pouch that you wear in the front of your kilt. It's where you like put your car keys or your like food or your flask, like whatever you need. It's a Sporin, right? But his is like this weird cat face, like, it's so funny. And then like a peg leg machine gun. It's just like, oh my God, you guys.
It's
so funny.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure that it's been talked about, but I don't think I've ever really heard it. But did anybody know where the design came from for him?
I don't know if it's based on anything super specific. I think part of me wants to. There was a guy we knew in college, Mike Bell, who basically is huge and red-haired and kind of just basically seems like what you think that Scotsman drawing is. So part of me wants to, and everyone working at Samurai Jack, we're all pals that Cal Arts, right? It was like Craig Kelman and Genndy and stuff. And like, I mean, Craig Kelman was like in my class, like we started Cal Arts together, and then Genndy and Robin Zetti, Craig McCracken, all those guys, they were like 1 year below us. They came in that second year that I was there. So I was a sophomore when they were freshmen. And so, I mean, we all know, and so I don't know. I can't remember, but I thought maybe they just used a memory of that. Like, remember Mike Bell? Oh yeah, you should look like Mike Bell. Maybe that was it. I don't know, because he certainly doesn't look like my brother. So, but it's hilarious. So it may have been a little bit of that. Maybe I don't know for sure, but I should. If I ever talk to Craig Kelman at some point, I should like ask him, or Genndy. I'd be like, dude, where'd you get that shit from? Like, because I can't recall. I have no idea.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think I try to watch any interviews you guys have been in or read anything that you guys have written. That way I don't ask you the same shit you've always been asked. Obviously there's some topics that we will talk about that I'm pretty sure you've talked ad nauseum about. But I try to keep it fresh because nobody likes being asked the same fucking 3 questions every single time. It's just not fun. Not fun for you.
It's been so many years though too. So I might not even remember that like I was asked that 1,000 years ago. I remember for the initial Jack DVDs that came out, they put special features on the end of them, and there was like in Genndy's backyard of his house, they set up a bunch of cameras and they interviewed us. So I don't know if you have those old DVDs, but
I do not know.
You should track those down, because they did like an interview, and it's like Lynn Naylor is on that, and Genndy and me, and I think Randy Myers may have even been on one, or Andy Siriano. Like I forget, but I know for sure I was there, and so was Gendy, and there was a few others too, right? But it's been so long since I've seen that. But so yeah, if you can track down those original DVDs, they have some of those special features. There is some behind the scenes stuff,
Yeah.
and they might even show clips of when either Mark was pitching the Scotsman's wife,
Hmm.
which is crazy because Mark had lost his voice, but he's still trying to like scream out at volume the way he does in his pitch, but it's all coming out like like totally raspy. But I think they show some of that on one of those special making of things. So yeah, man, you should, if you're a fan and you're curious, you should track those down and check that shit out, because it's like a time capsule.
I've got it written down and underlined 3 times, so I'm going to find it as soon as we're off this call. I'm pretty sure I can get it on eBay or Amazon.
You've got it, man. You've got it.
But going back to Samurai Jack, man, when you guys are working on this show, I ask this question all the time because I'm always curious to see what each person that's worked on this show thinks. Obviously, you're working with Gendy, so you guys had that hit with Dexter's Lab, and then he goes and helps Craig, and then they make Powerpuff Girls, right? So you're hitting hit, and then Samurai Jack comes along. At that point, Gendy, Craig, all those guys, Rob Renzetti, Randy Myers, all these people that you guys have kind of amassed into this amazing team. Chris Battle, Andy Bjork, Craig Kelman, you brought up, Brian Larson's that you said would come in later, your brother. You guys have this team, this very, very tight core. When Samurai Jack comes aboard and you guys are starting to work on this, do you guys know, or you specifically, do you know, like, man, this is going to be great because of what I'm watching, what I'm seeing? When did you know Samurai Jack was going to be great?
I mean, we just thought it was, for me, because I knew those guys were doing those other things, but I was off doing other stuff, so I wasn't working on any of that stuff with them, right? So I would just see it from the sidelines, going like, "Cool, I'm glad you guys are successful. It's awesome." Here I'm doing my best to try to work on, like, Men in Black, or I did like a season of that, and then it was Jackie Chan Adventures, and before that I did like Joseph, the straight to DVD sequel to like whatever, Prince of Egypt. So I did that, and before that I was doing layout like on Quest for Camelot.
Yeah.
And all that shit. So I had jumped around plenty. So when Samurai Jack came along, to me, I just felt like for the first time I finally got to truly do unfettered, like the stuff I was trained to do in college, but also that I always wanted to be doing anyway, right? Like, it's unfair to say that they trained me to do Samurai Jack in college. No, but they trained me to be a filmmaker. They trained me to understand cinema, and then whatever latent inspiration or skill that my brother and I had in us since birth, since we were always interested in films and animation and all that stuff, and we would just be trying to do it on our own before even going to school. Maybe there was some latent stuff, right, that was just always in us, ready to come out.
Yeah.
And when someone said, "Oh, here's some of the tools," we're like, "Fuck yeah!" And then we start building an amazing house. I don't know. So for me, it's like I had no idea how people would receive the show. I just knew I was having a lot of fun doing the cool shit that we wanted to do, and so was Gendy. He's like, "Fuck yeah, this is awesome." So I'm glad that it affected people positively and people had fond memories of it, especially enough to then come back and do that 5th season so late. So after the fact, pick up right where we left off, and like all that audience had grown and was ready for something that was a little bit darker, a little bit more pushed. It's funny too, because 5th season Samurai Jack is kind of the stuff that I always wanted to do in the initial seasons of Samurai Jack, but we couldn't, right? Because it was Y7. It had to be at a certain range, and like I was always be talking to Gendy. It's like, I love this episodic stuff, but shouldn't it be serialized? There needs to be some continuity as to what he experienced or what defeat he had, so that we can build on it a little bit, and it seemed like in the early days Gendy was kind of like, no, it doesn't matter. But whenever I got an episode, I always think about the history that I had done earlier, so I was still trying to have some sense of continuity. So there was some stuff, like some of the later ones when Aku's like messing with him with the time portal stuff. It's just like, Jack's got to be fucking pissed.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this is the way to get home, and the guy's like toying with them. It can't just be like, oh, here's another one, right? He has to carry the burden of all the previous failures or close calls or just something. So we were doing our best to be cognizant of that ourselves anyway, because we would have loved to have it been more serialized. But I think Gindi would have too, but the network kind of said no, because they want a kid to be able to turn it on at any time and be able to just enjoy a thing. I mean, and I get that, but I think kids are going to enjoy a thing regardless of whether it's an independent episode or if it's serialized. I don't think it fucking matters, but they say differently. So, and they have the money, so whatever. We got to do what they say.
Well, Craig McCracken had brought up the same thing, because there was a question from a fan, and it said, why didn't Blue learn any lessons? And he was like, I had to hit the reset button at the end of every episode. He was like, we couldn't go into the next one because the same sentiment you just echoed. It was, they needed a reset. It was the same thing. This is going to sound like a very dumb question, I'm sure, because you work for Marvel. But Brian, do you read any comics, or do you read comics back in the day?
Back in the day, yeah.
So
for sure.
At the beginning of every single Marvel comic book, that first page after the cover would give you an example. Say, my favorite character of all time in the Marvel universe has always been She-Hulk. I fucking love Jen Walters. I think she's a phenomenal character. I think she's better than the Hulk. I think she's funner than the Hulk, if that's even a real word, more fun than the Hulk. It's just, there's something about that character that I've always connected with. And getting, like I said, when you open the cover and it's like Jen Walters, cousin of Bruce Banner, turned into the Hulk because she was shot in the back by a mobster. So it gives you that, like, previously on the last episode of such and such in every single episode or every single comic, whether it's issue 100 or 1000, they're giving you that first page just to give you a refresher. So I feel like that's what Cartoon Network was doing. Like, oh, this is why you like these characters. This is what these characters do. But I was that kid who was like, I want to see growth, man. I want to see boom to boom to boom to boom, because there was so much more. That so many other shows that you could watch that weren't specifically cartoons that I followed as a little kid. My mom and I used to love, I don't know if you ever watched Tony Shalhoub and Monk back in the day. My mom and I loved to watch that one, right? He was a detective that was a germaphobe, didn't like germs, didn't like touch.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah. So that was such a great, and it led into each episode. But, I would have loved to see what you guys did with season 5 in the earlier seasons. Talking Jack in season 5 for just a little bit, because like I told you before we record, I just finished it for the second or third time this year, rewatching it. I got to say, man, you could take all 4 previous seasons. I think 5 has it beat. And don't get me wrong, all 4 seasons, there's so many episodes in that season 5. It's you guys a swan song with Jack.
Totally. Well, I mean, we had so many like years in between, right, to work and do other stuff, so we're always still growing and pushing. But I think even more specific, because I think we could have done something just as amazing back then. I totally believe we could have, right? It's just the nature of what we were allowed to do in the first 4 seasons was totally different, right? So we were able to then do things in the 5th season, as TVMA, so we can push things a little bit. And importantly, it wasn't TVMA. You think, oh, so now you can have like, gore and sex and all sorts of stuff. And it's like, well, that's not Jack. So of course we're not going to do that, right? It just means that we can put our own guardrails on. We can put our own parameters. We know what the show is. We know what the characters are. Now we can just explore a little bit more deeply some of the things we always wanted to do previously, right? It's just like, so, and it's serialized, it's telling a thing, there's a fully, an arc, all that shit. So we got to just sink our teeth into it more, which was great. And I think because we always would have loved to have done it, so when we finally got the opportunity, we're like, here we go. It's funny too, because it's like Gindi wanted to really make sure we didn't go nuts with the blood just because we could. I think I was probably pushing it a little bit more. They probably would love to say this, like, all I wanted was blood. That's technically not true. I just when he kills that one daughter of a coup, and the blood, it needs to be a shocking moment. So I just pushed it. Like I went like old school samurai movie. When he cuts it, it just goes like sprays along the wall, and we're linger on her for a while as she like and then goes, and we can see the blood just starting to just slowly drip on the wall. Then you see here the deck, and then the blood is spilling out over the stuff. He was just like, it just goes on too long, dude. let's pull it back. Let's save it for the pooling. That's all we just need to see it fly, and we go, oh, blood for the first time, and then it hits, and then we see it pool, and it's like, okay. But at least he didn't take out the other stuff, because then, he's wounded, and the shots of his hand along the wall and stuff like that, and leaving the blood trail, all that stuff was very important to me. So all he did was just make sure that this mega Shogun assassin style spray, because I love those old Lone Wolf and Cub 70s movies. It's like we watched that shit to death back when we were young, and we fucking love it. So that was almost like an homage to that, but it was just a little too much at that moment for Gendy. So he pulled that thing back, and it's cool. But there's so much in there that we finally were able to do, that we were just chomping at the bit all the time to like do. It's like so cool.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because when you were talking, I wanted to make sure I wrote down some stuff so I did not forget. And my handwriting sucks, but the first thing I wrote down was first human kill. And then you go into it, right? So it's like, we're there, Brian. We're here. We're mind melding.
It's so funny too, because it's like that's how Gendy will love to like portray that moment. But it's a bit of a retcon. Like, so he'll say now, because he killed humans in Samurai Jack, because there's the cabin of assassins.
Oh, that's right.
And you've got those guys, right? You've got the one Aboriginal looking like guy. You've got the big crazy Russian dude. You've got Mira who's trying to do this to save her people. You've got the Southern dandy.
Siamese twins.
The Siamese twins. You got all these characters, and we don't show the blood, but they're not robots, and we fucking killed them, right? So, but because we didn't show blood, so I think Gendy was kind of like, fuck, because that messes up his ability to claim first person human kill. So in a way, he's just kind of like, well, we never got super specific. We never said they weren't robots, right? And we never said,
it's like no body, no proof of death,
Yeah, because we see them dead in the ground, but we didn't see blood, right? Yeah. So it's like, hey, did they, whatever. It's just like, I get it. I know what you got to try to say, but it's fine. People want to say, technically, he killed these other people too. But maybe Jack has just forgotten about some of that shit, because he went through many years of PTSD, and part of us was thinking that he has the beard and everything, but it's taken him so long to do it. It's like 50 years in the future or something or more, and Jack is not 50.
Yeah.
Right. It's because not only did when Nakuf sent him into the future, it messed him up. We came up with this whole thing that like all the years that he was thrown forward, he's got like that many years like in the bank, just trying to catch up. So he's not gonna he's gonna look the same for like 1,000 years or something, right? So anyways, I was nerding out about all that type of weird side effects of time. And so for me, I was like, he just forgot. That was so long ago. He can't remember that he killed those idiots in the snow. But anyways,
it's so glad. But like I said, that first now that you broke that down, man, do you ever read The Killing Joke back in the day by Alan Moore?
Yeah, like 1,000 years ago. I mean, I barely remember it, but yeah.
I'm pretty sure you'll remember the ending, because it's Batman with the Joker's pencil neck in his fucking grip. And then the last page is the Joker laughing, page goes black, and then all you hear or all you read in the onomatopoeia is crack or crack. So it's essentially leaving your mind up to, and there's always been this huge debate between comic book nerds and fans of Batman and all this other stuff. Did he kill him or did he not? Yes, he's laughing. You hear crack. His hand is on his throat. You hear crack. He's shot these people. He's raped Batgirl. He's did this all in front of Jim Gordon. And then it's letting your mind, finish the story that they didn't hand it to you and say, hey, this is what we want you to believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, he fucking killed the Joker at the end of this one shot, So until you said that, I was like, oh man, that's Gendy's Killing Joke moment right there. Did they die? I was like, fuck, dude, Brian, you broke this shit down so much deeper than I possibly could have.
Yeah, but it's some of it's accidental, right? Because at the time we're just like, yeah, they're dead. No big deal, right? It wasn't until so many years later he's like, but that gets in the way of what I'm trying to say now. Fuck. So it's a little bit of retcon, but it's funny too, because we always were going to have Ashi live,
Mm-hmm.
because what fifth season Samurai Jack was, it was a version of what was going to be like a samurai. Jenny was going to do a Samurai Jack movie to wrap it all up, and animated theatrical release, big thing over all those years, but it would always fall through. So we had like 3 or 4 different versions of how the story could go. So when it came time to do the 5th season, my first question was like, which version are we doing? And he's just like, well, it's kind of a hybrid, because I like kind of how we were playing with this. The overall concept that we were always playing with, I think, is still valid, but here's some specificity. And the real curveball was like, it was the time jump, right? Because that's one thing in any iteration that we were doing that was never there. So it was like a new inspiration for Genndy to the time jump. I was like, whoa. Then we started breaking down the story, and it freed us up a little bit. And Genndy really had a clear idea what he wanted to do. But for the longest time, we were like, while working on 5th season, we thought there might be possibly more, or we had like before he like fully locked in, he's like, no, we're done, I'm ending it for real, right? It was either one of the other movie ideas with Ashi, or it was the early stages of the 5th season. I can't remember, because they all bleed together.
Yeah.
But she disappears, and Jack can't let it go, and he goes and finds like this kind of like in honor of The Bride with the White Hair. There's the Hong Kong kung fu movie that's super arty and crazy. There's like this flower that can like heal you or provides like certain amount of magic. So we're going to have like this flower, this thing that had like the essence of time or something. Anyway, it was going to be the thing he would need to go get her, because she disappeared. She's like lost in time, right? Or something, and he was going to get on this time worm and go after her. So eventually we would have like these episodes of like her and him going through time on doing adventures and shit. But at some point, Genndy was just like, no, she's just going to be gone. And it's so, because you got to have that melancholy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, and I kept trying to pitch like, oh man, because I've got it figured out. Like, we don't have to do the time worm shit. That's weird, but I know how it could work. And like, she's having this other adventure going there. And eventually he meets up. I mean, dude, I got it all planned out. He's like, you can go off and write your fan fiction, but it's not going to happen. I'm like, God damn it, man. Because I think at some point he's finally done. He's like, this will be clean. This will be cool. We can put it to rest. It can be like a nice button on this whole, thing that he had created. So yeah, awesome. Good on him,
There's 3 things that I wanted to touch bases with, and I think we can wrap it up there, and then we'll get into some fans' questions, and we'll call it. But the 3 things that I thought was, there might be more than 3 when I actually start thinking about it. As soon as we get off this Zoom call, I'm like, fuck, dude, there was 12 other things that I should have brought up with Brian, so I looked like I knew what I was talking about. It always happens.
If you have any, just write them down. We can schedule another time and do like a part 2. So don't worry about it.
Beautiful. That works for me. And I'm always glad when you guys want to come back on, because like I said, I look up to you guys and I have fun talking to you guys. You guys made my childhood, man. And now you're making my adulthood. But the 3 things, 1, the opening sets the tone right away. That intro is my favorite. I talked about this with Craig, and I've talked about it with so many times. I'm pretty sure the fans are tired of hearing about it. Backgrounds. The style of Samurai Jack, I really hope one day we get a book of it. I want to see an art of Samurai.
I know. I'm surprised there's I thought that they were in process, that they were actually, don't quote me, but I have a vague memory. I thought something like that was being worked on.
I hope so.
It needs, and I hope so, because like, I mean, Scott Will's paintings, I mean, come on, dude. Scott Will, that dude, so good.
That dude's another dude that I've been chasing for quite some time, but it's just that man, like Primal alone, like Primal in season 5 of Samurai Jack, the pinnacle of anything animated out there right now. I don't give a shit what anybody says.
That's awesome. I mean, thanks, dude, because Primal was amazing. It was a blast working with Genndy on Primal. I only was able to board on 2 of those because I was so busy with all the Marvel stuff, and it's a bummer. I think it bummed Genndy out, and I feel bad about it. But I helped him and Derek. We basically, it was us, the 3 of us, just breaking down the whole season, and like what this thing was, and getting into all that pulpiness and all that awesome. And it was great. We would just meet up at his house in the evening, after the little one's gone to bed, be like, later, wife, I'll be back in a couple hours, because he doesn't live that far away from me. So, we head over to his house, he has an idea of what he wants to do for a particular episode. So we start talking about it. We start breaking it down in very broad senses. And then we have like a follow-up meeting to really start getting down to some specifics, but there's still some wiggle room. All of it is still just beat cards and thought. And then when it's finally, we're like, okay, that's baked relatively enough. Now it's time to get the board artist in here who's going to do it. And Gendy used a really tight group of boards. Like it was me, it was Gendy, and it was like one of our other pals, Dave. And I can't remember. I don't think anyone else did any. I don't think Mark did any at that time. So, but anyways, so what you do is then you show the board artist, here's what we got. This is what we're doing, right? And they go, yeah. So they see exactly what it is that you want to do, but there's enough space for ideas. Like it's say, oh, but if we can do blah. So it's not like they're rewriting it or changing it completely, but they're adding all the little specific awesome details, fill in the last of the blanks. So now you know exactly what the fucking episode is, like from beginning to end. No ifs, ands, or buts. You get it. So they can go off and draw it. So never sat there and wrote a script. It's just, here's the beats, here's the things we know, we talk about it, we get it. You go off and you board it, and then Gendy can make whatever notes and changes he wants. And it was so cool and it's so freeing. And once again, it felt like it was one step more awesome than even working on fifth season Samurai Jack, right? Because it was true. There was no one to answer to but ourselves. So fifth season Samurai Jack to Primal, that was such an amazing period of doing such cool work, because we just didn't have to. You just have to answer to anybody, and that's like gold. You never get that.
That's what made Cartoon Network so great in the early days. Everybody forgets it, and look at Cartoon Network now. So many people's hands stirring the Kool-Aid, and this Kool-Aid tastes like shit, Brian. It tastes like shit right now. Hopefully.
No, it's true, man. It's funny because like some of that stuff was starting to happen, at the end of, Samurai Jack, the initial run, I think, but also I think some of it was around we were doing Symbiotic Titan.
Yep.
Just made it kind of like annoying. Like there's people chiming in a little bit. It's just like, why do they have to say? And that Gendy had clout, so we didn't have to do what they were saying. But some of the up and comers maybe were a little annoyed or pissed that they couldn't exert influence. So things started getting, uncomfortable and unwelcome. So we're like, fine, we're fucking out of here. We can do this, whatever. But Mike Lazo obviously went on to do Adult Swim. So that's why we were able to do, so we didn't call it Mike, game called Mike Lazo, and Mike Lazo would be like, fuck yeah, here's the money, go do the thing. Right. So it's just like, okay, it's time to get out of that so that we can do unfettered cool over here, and that was great.
Absolutely, man. And before we go too deep into Primal, man, what do you remember? What boards you did? No, you're perfectly fine.
No, yeah, I do. I did Rage of the Ape Men, and then I did Scent of Death, so the one that comes right after Rage of the Ape Men. So if you remember which ones those were, so those were a blast to do.
That show, like I was. So there's three things that I cried over. Samurai Jack, I'll give you those real quick. Samurai Jack, the opening, beautiful. That scene with him sitting his back against the tree. Like I said, try to stay away from this type of shit because it's kind of hard for you guys to remember. However, it's one of those scenes, like, but it's just Jack and the intro sitting his back against, and the snow's coming down, and he just breathes out. And it's just, there's something so beautiful, so quiet about that scene. I don't know what it is. I don't have the words to articulate, because I sit in front of a movie. I love the movie. That's what I can tell you, Brian. I can't tell you, oh, I saw what he was or she was doing there with this scene and this scene. I'm too dumb for that. I just like, yeah, movie good. I like color, right? That's what I get from it.
No, that's great.
The other one was when you see, I don't even know what they were called. I don't even know if they had names, but they probably did, and you probably know. But the spirit samurai, the spirit shogun that was trying to get Jack to essentially kill himself. Harry Carey, is that how you say it?
Yeah, but that's like the brutal way to say it. I think it's a seppuku or a seppuku. I forget how you pronounce it, but that's like the more official term. Yeah.
So it was. I don't know what it was. Just about that character. That entire character felt so eerie. Right, the green color, just him coming out, very hulking, very different than Jack. And then I loved how Jack's anger kind of made a play in the earlier episodes in the season, because you kind of see that flashback. There's a few episodes I go back to in that original run of Jack where I'm just like, holy shit, this should have won them every Emmy for the first 2 years of Jack. That episode where he's fighting, oh fuck, what was he fighting? It was when it was the white screen, and everybody's fighting in the white, and then everybody's fighting in the black. Jack, I can't remember.
It was the ninja episode.
Yes, that episode. I remember watching that, and then like last year when I was rewatching it, I watched that episode like 3 times in a row. I was like, what? I thought the weed was kicking in a lot earlier than it was, and I was like, I don't remember this at all. And then it's just going. I'm like, I'm mesmerized, and my wife gets out of the shower, and I'm just staring at the screen like this, and she's like, "You okay?" I'm like, go back in the shower, do whatever you got to do. I'm going to rewatch this again. She's like, well, the baby's asleep. We got to put him in. He's like, he's fine. He's going to wake up in 2 hours. He's going to be hungry. I'll be here. Fine. Just go away. I wanted to watch it again. And I watched it. So beautiful in that angry Jack episode. There's just something, and maybe it's because I'm taking my own personal experiences with anger. And I see that, right? If you remember Emperor's New Groove with Kronk, right? He had the devil and he had the angel on his shoulder, and they're always giving him. That's what it felt like with those anger issues, like having somebody else that felt like they were in charge of your meat vessel, right? They were driving the train. That's what happens when anger takes over. And I fucking loved how you guys brought in something real world into a cartoon. And even at a young age, I understood that.
Yeah.
I said I'd go back in time and slap myself, but I said I understood anything at 12 years old, but I feel like I understood that. And that's why I connected, and it was the same thing. And then the final spoiler, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen this, the show's the for 5 years. The series finale ended 5 years ago. So 3, 2, 1, you've been warned. That final scene after Ashi fades to existence, because if Aku's not there, she can't be there. Him being sad and going through life, and then him coming to the end. Like I thought he was going to kill himself at the end of the episode. The first time I watched, I was like, he's going to do what the Shoguns wanted him to do in like episode 2 or 3, whatever it was. I was like, he's going into the woods to kill himself. And I was like, fuck, dude. Like I remember being really bummed the first time I watched this series, or the series finale. And I'm like, dude, please don't kill Jack. I can't take this. I started getting emotional and shit. And then I see the ladybug, right? I'm trying not to cry right now, but I see the ladybug fly in, and I'm like, these motherfuckers did it. They got me to think for just a split second that Jack was not going to be here. And then that ladybug was, it was like the boat for the dead, the gondola ride for the dead, where they're taking the spirits and they're taking them to the afterlife. They're ushering them on, saying, hey, your time is no longer here. You've done everything. You can pass on. That's what that ladybug meant to me. That ladybug flying in, that was Ashi landing.
Yeah.
That was Ashi saying it's okay. That smile.
Yeah.
That smile from Jack made everything worth it. And I did that without crying, and I'm really surprised I did that, because I started to feel it. Come on, Brian. I was like,
it's awesome, dude.
Don't cry in front of your heroes. Don't cry in front of your heroes. But it was so.
Hey, it's good when art or entertainment can move you or inspire you. It's like we learned this once a long time ago with one of our story teachers, Ken Bruce. He's amazing. We were in college, and he's just like, it had something to do about going into a theater and why do some things make you cry and why do some things don't, and multiple people watching the same thing, but maybe not everyone's crying. It's like, you as a filmmaker, you can try as hard as you can, you can push all the buttons, do all your stuff, right? But it's not really what, and that does play a part, but in the end, it's not really what you're doing. It's the baggage that the audience brings with them into the theater. We all have our stuff. So different things can hit people differently. Like, for example, I love the Raiders movies, of course. I know everyone loves to crap on Temple of Doom, but I've loved Temple of Doom since I was a kid, just because I got past the things that were like failures. I just didn't see that, just because I'm just like, it's Indy and he's kicking ass. But also just because I was such a nerd for the rope bridge scene at the end, when they had the pneumatically air-controlled dummies to actually flail and kick. I thought that was such an incredible, real special effect. I was just so in love with it. I was just like, you guys win, right? So I overlooked a lot of the failings, but all the stuff with the kids, right? Because they're kidnapping the kids and they're forcing them to work in the mines. And there's that one bit where the one kid escapes and he comes back to his village and he brings that little thing, and that's what motivates Indy to go. on the journey and, free the kids and find out what's going on. So years later, I'm an adult, fucking, this was like, I don't know when, but some of the local theaters here, like the Aero Theater in Santa Monica, they would play like all kinds of films, and you can go see them again on the big screens. They were doing like indie. And so I was there watching that stuff. I'm watching Temple of Doom. And I'm older now, right? And I don't even think my daughter had been born at this time. Maybe she was, maybe she was, or maybe she was en route, or I was dating my gal who would eventually become my wife. I forget what it was, but there's something, or maybe because my older brother, he had kids, so I'd been, I'm a different man. Yeah,
absolutely.
And they get that part, and that kid comes around the thing, and he comes up against the rock, and he's just like, oh, straight. And like all those shots of him trying to walk towards Indy in the distance, all that stuff. I felt it welling up. It was like the child in jeopardy, and just the baggage that I maybe have attained over the years, from like being like 14 to being like 34 at the time when I was seeing this, or maybe I was 40 at the time, I forget. It was crazy, dude. It like came on like it didn't. And it was, what's nuts is now I fucking been watching like Moana with my daughter. And there's two parts in that movie that fucking get me. And it blows me away. Like, so kudos to the dudes who made that thing. But again, like, as my story teacher told, it's not necessarily them, it's fucking me. It's like whatever I have with me. I don't know how familiar you are with Moana.
Oh, I'm pretty.
Watch it. So it's the part when it's the part when she goes into the cave and she awakens the spirits of her ancestors, and she's on those big boats, and we go to that Lin-Manuel Miranda song, and it's them in the glory days of the ancient times, and they're sailing. That gets me fucking misty-eyed, because I project like, oh look, that's how it should be, that's how they were. And whether it's white guilt or whatever, colonialism, oppression, all the rest, all the stuff that just takes from certain indigenous and native peoples around the world, it's like, I feel a sense of like loss, but also at the same time a sense of beauty of what once was. And like, it's such a confluence of emotions. And then the next one is at the end, when she realizes the stuff about Te Fiti, and she's walking out, and the music gets all peaceful and calm, and she's walking, the hair's all blowing. I'm just like, oh my God. I'm sitting there with my daughter. She's just like watching and having a good time. And I'm just getting like, I get like Sterling, I call it Sterling K. Brown tears, because like, it's like you look relatively stoic, except I'm way weaker because my lip might quiver, and you get like a single tear going down. You know what I mean? It's like straight up movie style. Anyways, no, I hear what you're saying though, dude. But that's what that ending of Jack was supposed to be. It's like, it's okay. Like her spirit, she's not really gone. You know what I mean? The spirit is there. He's learned. He understands. He doesn't blame himself or anything else. You know what I mean? He's way more zen at that moment about it, which is great. So
it seemed like he found inner peace with just that expression, because you carry something like that. Now, obviously, I'm not a man at a time. I don't know, but sure. Seeing Jack, seeing movies like Encino Man, you see the strife in their lives, man. You see that they're a man at a time. This is not their time. They're trying to get back to whatever it is they lost. And then you see very few smiles from Jack. There was, some throughout the series, you would see some, but this smile was different. Like I said, it was just that finding inner peace. That's what everybody is chasing, and that's what I thought was so beautiful about that. And like I said, you guys absolutely crushed it with both Primal and with Samurai Jack. Before we rotate in the fans, or the two questions I give you before we get to the fans questions, man. We have a little girl on the way, right? So this is our third child. Man, that's awesome. I'm so pumped. I'm so pumped because we have a 13-year-old, and now we have a 1-year-old, and now we have a baby, right?
That's nuts.
Dude, it's fucking wild, man. Like I said, I was in the Navy for a little while, and the fans have heard this story before, but I don't think they've heard all of it. My wife was told she was never supposed to have kids. I can't remember if I told the story on the podcast or not.
That's amazing.
But she almost passed away. I think she was 16, 15, somewhere around there, in a car accident. She's from Massachusetts. They hit a little bit of black ice. Seatbelt failed on impact, so her entire abdomen smacked into the center console, or the whatever that thing, not center console, it is dashboard, excuse me. So she's in a medically induced coma, gangrene, a whole bunch of shit fucking happened, right? She almost didn't make it, right? She's told she's never have kids, and we had Hayden, our oldest. And then 12 years later, 11 years later, whatever it is, she's like, hey, I'm pregnant. I'm like, bullshit. And then she's like, no, I took these two pregnancy tests, I'm pregnant. I was like, holy shit, this is happening. And then it happens. And then you think, well, it took like 12 years. And I was like, I was supposed to get a vasectomy. I was like, but I'm like, man, I'm 33. I shouldn't have a vasectomy right now. And I was like, we'll just wait a little while. And then fuck, dude, a little while ago, she's like, hey, I'm pregnant. I was like, bullshit. And she's like, no, I took these two tests. I'm like, fuck, we're doing this again. This is wild. It took us 12 years, 11 years, whatever it was. And then it took us a little bit over a year. And we're like, holy fuck, dude, this is fucking wild. So I'm so excited because when I talked to, I had Linda Semensky on not too long ago.
Oh, and, awesome.
So she's one of those people I reach out to all the time when I've got a question about something. Her, Robert Alvarez, Randy Myers, Fred Seibert's another guy. Like they always trying to point me in the right direction if I feel like I'm being misled or I need a little bit of information. So she was like, I'm excited for you. I can't wait, because she's like, now all your movies are going to change. All of your cartoons, watching, the toys you're going to buy, they're all going to change. I was like, no, I'm still buying toys, but I'm just going to be buying girl toys. And now I have a reason to watch more cartoons, because my wife always comes and is like, watch cartoons again. I was like, yeah, I'm watching with Hayden though. She's like, but you're watching cartoons. So it's like, man, you watch those dumbass doctor shows that make me want to vomit. So leave me alone. These cartoons are fun. But yeah, I'm really excited. And, a couple years ago when Frozen came out, I remember seeing everybody, like all the moms that were driving the minivans and driving the sedans, singing that Let It Go song, right? And then I remember I was going to get my comic books on a Wednesday. I just happened to look over, and there's this lady that's fucking gripping, like white knuckling the steering wheel in her minivan. And I could hear this song, right? It's like that Adele song, Hello. Everywhere you went, you heard it, right? She's belting it out, like, and I look at her and I see tears in her eyes. I'm like, this bitch is crazy. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is this song so emotional to people? I never really listened to it, right? And I'm just looking over and I'm like, man, these people are crazy. And then I see a dude and I'm like, why is he crying, right? Then I find out I'm having a daughter. Then I actually hear the song, like I listen to it, right? So at nighttime, we put on Disney favorites on the little Alexa machine, and we listen to the songs and stuff, because Cooper, my youngest one, he loves it. He loves the music. He loves the movies. He loves the cartoons. He loves all that stuff. And then I'm just sitting there washing dishes one day, and that Frozen song, Let It Go, comes on. And then it's like the chorus before she belts out and just becomes Aretha Franklin of the Frozen universe, right? Before that beautiful, soulful voice comes out. And I'm just washing dishes and I just start crying for no fucking reason. And I'm singing along and I'm like, and then I flash back to that lady. I flash back to that lady that I saw in the car many years ago. And I look at her, I'm like, why is she crying? And then I thought, I was like, oh shit, this is an emotional song. This is a song about this lady that's been oppressed. This lady's been held back. This lady that's been put into a box, into a corner, and told this is how she has to be. And that could be with a boy, that could be with a girl. It doesn't matter. Gender doesn't matter in this situation, because people are put in these boxes, say you have to feel this type of way because you're X, Y, or Z, right?
Well, the thing is, it's a human sentiment, right?
Yes.
So and it's fantastic that they were able to do it in Frozen the way they did it, and that song means so much to so many people, because God knows, like, women have been, suffering under a patriarchy for a long time, however you want to call it. It's like there is historically tremendous oppression against womankind, right? So the song is insanely cathartic for that. But not that men could steal this, but as a human being, whether you're male, female, or anything that you claim to be, or are, someone at some point of all stripes has possibly experienced that, and or can relate to that in some way, small or some way great. And I think that's what film and storytelling is supposed to do. It's supposed to illuminate the human experience, whether it's ugly, beautiful, common, mundane, like any and all of it, right? It's to help us grapple with this thing that is life, right, that we experience. So that's awesome. It's funny too, because in Frozen 2, there's the song when she goes into the ice and she's going to connect with the mom, and they've got you know, it's like a tandem thing with the, you know, there's that rousing kind of part where the mom comes in and says, you are who you were supposed to be this whole time, like you are all you need, you know, I mean, you don't need to search for other bullshit, it's like you are okay.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote that so beautifully. That's the one that, out of the Frozen stuff, that can kind of get me misty-eyed occasionally. I think we've heard it far too many times now. Like when my daughter was younger, like it was all Frozen style, like fully. So yeah, man, I've been there. She's moved on to some other things now that she's older. She's 6 now, so it's once in a blue moon she'll go back to one of the old jams. Like she'll do dance party every night, right? She selects songs off the thing and she plays it. It's funny, dude. So go to the Frozen one and I'm just like, reaching back in the bag, doing for the old.
You want to make that cry again today, don't you?
Because it's funny, because now it's like it's the live action, some of the live action Disney stuff, like like Descendants, right?
Oh, my son, my oldest one, loves that one.
She loves that shit. And then she found the zombies one, where it's the zombies and the human kids and the werewolf kids and the whole bit, and like, so she fucking loves that, some of that stuff too, which is hilarious. But she also actually rediscovered the opening song for Tangled.
Oh,
many more things, and so she also digs on that one too. So it's funny, it goes, you know, it goes with the moods, the flavors, but she loves it. Yeah, it's great. No, so congrats, man. We wanted to have I would have loved to have another girl. We're basically one and done because we started when we were late and old. So I don't think there's any miracle pregnancies coming our way, unfortunately, because we needed a lot of science help just to get us our gal that we have now. And my wife is like, I can't even imagine having another. It's just ridiculous. We're old, and like work is always crazy, and it's just, it's hard. So kudos, man. That's awesome. It kills me too, because I'll see toddlers, you know, kids that are like 1.5, maybe 2 to like maybe like 3.5, 4. That's like a magical spot where all the adorableness is there. And yes, of course it's challenging, and yes, of course there's things that drive you nuts, but you always look back and go, oh god damn it, you're so ridiculously adorably cute, and like everything is so brand new, and the communication is starting to come out even more so, and you're seeing the bubbles of like the actual personality truly, and choice and legitimate interest. It's, oh man, it's a magical time. So yeah, congrats, man, you get to go through that again. That's cool.
Thanks. And last thing I wanted to tell you before we hit the fans questions, man, but the reason that I'm so stoked, not only are we bringing another kid into the world, with my oldest one, the first 4 years of his life, you can completely write me out of the books. I was deployed. I did not, like, once he turned 2, I was gone, or 2 months, excuse me. Once he was 2 months, I was in a different state, even though we were only 3 hours apart. We were in Washington State. We had to go down to Portland. We weren't allowed to go home during the week, and we had duty, and I was only allowed to go home 1 day a month for, I think it was like 2.5, 3 months. And then we deployed for, I think it was 7 months, the first deployment, and every other deployment was 9 months after that. That's you know, tough. So, and then I was stationed in Southern California. They were back out in Florida, where we're at now in Orlando, you know, so I wasn't able to see any of them. So I missed first words. I missed first steps. I missed first boo-boos. I missed first everything. That's and crazy. when Cooper, when we found out we were going to have Cooper, our middle child now, I was ecstatic, because I was like, oh, this is like a redo, not in a sense where I can recapture everything I didn't get to see, but this was like, I didn't get to see anything. I didn't get to experience anything. I didn't get to have that bonding that my wife has with the oldest, right? So I felt like inadequate as a man. I felt like I made the worst decision, and I still feel like I made the worst decision of my life, was joining the military. I got hurt neck and back, fucked it up, you know, and then the worst thing is I fucked up a relationship that I had, and I missed not all of the good things, because my oldest son still does good things. He does great things, man. You know, he does some stupid ass things, but what kid doesn't? What adult fucking doesn't do stupid shit, right? But it's just like, I missed all of that, and that hurts so much. That's what the stuff that would keep me up at night, still keeps me up at night. So I get to experience that with Cooper, and I'm like, oh, this is so fucking cool. And then right when he starts walking, right when he starts taking his first fucking step, I start crying, and my wife sees me. She's like, why are you crying? I was like, because I didn't know him walking would be a happy day and a sad day. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, I'm never going to get to experience this again as a dad. granddad is different. You know, that doesn't count. An uncle doesn't count. It's not your kid in a sense,
Right.
you know? But I was like, I'm never going to get to experience this again. And then she was like, but you will. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, get another one. I was like, fuck off. Really? And so, yeah. So that, like I said,
That's hilarious.
yeah, it's just really cool, man. And thanks. I'm really stoked for it because I never thought I'd have one kid, let alone two. Now I got a third one on the way, and I got a little girl, man. I'm so fucking pumped, dude.
That's great.
Yeah, right.
Great.
So, all right, man, we'll get to the fans' questions. I've kept you on here long enough. Those two questions I gave you before, man. So you got a Mount Rushmore.
Oh,
Four
right.
people plus one. Who would be on your Mount Rushmore and who would be on your honorable mention?
You know, it's funny because when you gave me the preface for that, it's like, you know, my thought was like, in what context? Like, is it Mount Rushmore of artists, Mount Rushmore of friends and family, Mount
Dealer's
Rushmore
choice.
of movies? You know, it could be anything. So, a variety of them came to mind. So I'd say, you know, just a game we would always play is what are your five top films you take to a desert island? Like that's all you get, right? So this is kind of similar, right? And so I'll go with films. And the thing is, it was so hard for us. We've been playing this game since college, and depending on your mood any given day, the thing changes. But for me, some of the constants, it's Raiders of the Lost Ark, Lawrence of Arabia, um, you know, just ones from childhood, right? Ones that have inspired me and carried me through into adulthood. It was like those two. But also, I loved Excalibur. I loved Conan the Barbarian. And honorable mention, amazingly enough, why would it be an honorable mention? It looks Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
You'd think that'd be in the main list. But that's for me of a particular age. And those things stay in their own perfect little isolated pantheon.
Absolutely.
But then you get older and, you know, other movies come out and you're like, that's fucking amazing. So there'd be a time when like Braveheart would have been like fully on the list, or Heat. You know what I mean?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I fucking love fucking Heat, you know. I'm trying to think of some other ones that I've seen recently. Like There Will Be Blood, I thought was, you know, incredible. It was just like, oh shit, look at that. You know, like that's how you make a fucking movie. You know what I mean? There's just so many. But I think like those four without honorable mention for movies is like kind of like it's always been like an old school go-to.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And but then you can have another one for like music, like bands. It's funny, like I love my rock, but I also love like swing music, dance music, but I also love orchestral movie sound scores. Fucking love all that shit. But when it comes to rock, I've known people like friends that every fucking band seems to be like their favorite band. I'm like, no. What is your true favorite band? There's like probably one, maybe two that like, who's Zeus in your pantheon? You know what I mean? And for me, like the first number one band I always like fucking loved to death was Kiss. So Kiss was always number one until Iron Maiden came out. And it's like, so in my pantheon, it's like a shared pantheon. It's Kiss and Maiden, but they're tops for different reasons.
Yeah.
And under them would be like oh my god, like Queensryche, you know what I mean? You know, Metallica, you know, I discovered Dream Theater in college. I like Dream Theater. Rush would be
man, I don't know if you can talk about it, but I smoke a lot of weed. Rush is one of those bands. I don't know what it is. Maybe they were into weed too, who knows? But they're one of those bands that I love sparking a joint to. And then Vital Signs, my favorite song from Rush. There's something about that. But I'm so glad you brought up Rush because they're not talked about enough.
No, I love Vital Signs. I think Moving Pictures is, because that's another game we play. Which is your top Rush album? And you know, my brother is a huge Rush fan. Because my brother's like an exceptional drummer, as well as being an amazing animation guy. It's like, because like that was like one of the first real, like he always knew how to draw amazingly well, but he taught himself how to play the drums, and like, you know, it kept on going throughout all the years, and you know, he was amazing. Still is. But Moving Pictures was the album we'd listen to all the time, along with our Kiss and stuff. But you know, Peter Criss can't hold a candle near Pert, right? So Mark would like practice with the Rush album. And it's funny too, because now in our elder years, you know, we got older. You know, my bro, he worked on John Carter, Warlord of Mars. He helped co-write that. He second even directed on that stuff with Andrew Stanton and all that type of stuff. And I went out to visit him in London for like a week when they were shooting that fucking thing, which was awesome and fun to do. But Andrew Stanton is also a huge Rush fan, and apparently Geddy Lee has, because his wife I think is English, but they have a house out there, a flat out there, not far from where they're shooting. Somehow it got worked out where people talk to people, and Geddy Lee was going to come visit the set, and I'm like, what? You know what I mean? And Mark's like, yeah, because apparently this thing with Andrew Stanton, they're all hooked up, and Andrew Stanton knew that Mark was like a huge Rush fan, so we got to meet Geddy Lee, and like I got this awesome photo of Mark. Geddy Lee's just there in his coat, and it's cold, and we're outside in the set, and he's like looking around. Mark's like blah 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 blah, expand things. Anyways, they hit it off, and time goes by, and I guess they exchanged a couple of emails or something at some point. Anyways, Mark eventually, he's brought in to help finish Brave, right? And as a result, they win the Oscar for Brave, right? Because that's all the Pixar movies win.
Yeah.
And he gets this fucking email from Geddy Lee out of the fucking blue, like the next day or whatever. And it's just a sweet, adorable little email. And it's saying, hey, Mark, my wife and I just got back to the house from being on vacation. Anyways, turned on the TV just in time to see you walk up and win an Academy Award. Oh my goodness, how wonderful for you.
That's so cool.
So nice to see. Sweetheart, right? Well, that kind of little loose contact kept on a little bit. So when Rush was doing that, what eventually became, I think, their final tour, which we didn't know at the time was going to be their final tour. Otherwise, I would have made sure I was there, but I fucking wasn't. But they were playing down in LA, and Mark got to go down and hang out like in the Forum. He was able to be backstage before sound check and escorted Neil Peart's drums to the stage.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I think he was given the option to like, you want to get out there and play? Because I knew he was a drummer. And I can't remember, but I think he like actually said no, because it's like, no, this is hallowed ground, and I'm not going to fuck up his shit at all. Like, I have too much respect for it. It's like, I appreciate the offer. If I remember correctly, he denied. He respectfully declined. If I hope that's what I remember him telling me, but I can't. And then speaking of Iron Maiden, my bro just recently directed that Iron Maiden came out with a new album, and they've got a music video out, Writings on the Wall or something like that. Anyways, it's all this animated, and it's animated in an old school kind of like old 1980s heavy metal kind of way. But he helped direct that video, so we got to meet Bruce Dickinson. And so Bruce Dickinson eventually, like, he's got his fucking phone number, and like they're like Bruce Dickinson's like, before they start the tour, they're rehearsing like in some hangar in Santa Monica. I don't know where the fuck they're doing. And he's like, but anyway, so Bruce is hanging out. He's like, hey man, you want to get some lunch? He's like, yeah. So they have like this 3 or 4 hour lunch. They're talking about all sorts of shit, and like they're fucking, and because we also do not only just the martial arts, but we also did a lot of European rapier and saber sword fighting and fencing as well. And Bruce was a champion in all that as well.
Really?
So they would talk like, yeah. During I don't know how familiar with our Iron Maiden, but in the 1980s, when they're having like one of their biggest tours ever for the Power Slave, they toured the world. Power Slave is amazing, big, great album for them, and it was a huge fucking tour worldwide, everything, all that shit. Bruce, they played like multiple sold out nights at the Long Beach Arena down here in California, and so Bruce in the day drove up to USC to compete in some fencing competitions and before the show, and then went back and then did the show, and then that was getting ready in time for like the 84 Olympics were coming up, and then prep for it before the 84 Olympics. Bruce was actually selected, I think, to be the team captain of one of the British team groups, because he was ranked, I think, 6th in the fucking, if not the world, he was ranked 6th or 1st in Britain, one of those. Anyways, he was a fucking high level fencer, mega high level fencer. And so they picked him to be, you should be the team captain of like Group Saber or group, like whatever it is. And he had to say no because they were going to be on tour for this album. Can you fucking believe that shit? Anyway, so but I just think it's funny that you talk about childhood heroes. It's like, here's my bro, kind of like, yeah, man, once in a blue moon, I get to chat with Geddy Lee and Bruce Dickinson. I'm like, what the fuck? It's like insane, dude, insane. Anyway, so those would be some of the Mount Rushmores.
It's funny where life kind of takes you, man.
Who knew? It's insane.
it really goes to show you how big this world is and yet how small it really
Right.
is, you know. That other one I wanted to ask you, man, 2 books on your shelf that you think every fan of animation or anybody in animation should have. What 2 books are thrown out there?
It's funny. You mentioned it, you said that people have mentioned Illusion of Life, and it is true, especially if you don't know. One that was hilarious. I would say if you're truly learning to it's just straight up animate. Um, Preston Blair's Art of Animation, because like we had that when we were kids, and that's kind of how we kind of learned a lot of shit before we ever went off to college and anything like that. So that's a great one. But personally, I think I've got a bunch of Miyazaki's storyboard books, the storyboards he did for his fucking movies, and like those things are gold to me. Like they're so good, and you can see like here's his drawing, and that is the shot in the movie. There's no fucking around, right? It's like, no, here it is, and there it is, right? Love that. So when I discovered that those things were out and you can get them, I was like, hell's yeah. I mean, we had already gone through college and stuff, but then you can still learn so much, right? And I fucking love it. Like the one from Porco Rosso or Lapita, or Kiki's Delivery Service, fucking, they're so good. I fucking love them. The only other thing I would think of is like the combined big mega complete graphic novels of all of Akira.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fucking great. I learned so much because those books came out when I was in high school, and then they was followed up with the fucking movie, which was insanely groundbreaking, and incredibly, it's still groundbreaking even to this day in many respects. But the graphic novels we were looking at and reading first, and then it was like, and then there's a movie, and it just blew me away. But it wasn't until much later we finally got the full unfettered run of the graphic novels, because they put them in the backup, they're back up there and on my shelf, and I mean, they're just so amazing. The illustrations are so dynamic and so cinematic, so infinitely inspirational. And also I think when we were younger too, we had Masamune Shiro's Appleseed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was similar in that way, where there's a lot of cinematic panache to how they would handle some of the panels and stuff. And I think that stuff just got ingrained, because we just consume it.
Yeah.
So then when we're learning boarding, it's like, I'll give you another one too. When we were young, probably too young to have these books, but we had all 4 of Frank Frazetta's books. There was the famous 4 books that he did, right, of like the Art of Frank Frazetta, but there was like 4 classic ones. They're out in the 70s. Totally dating myself. We had those in the 70s, right? And I think my mom was kind of like, are you sure? Because all these naked sketches and women and all this type of stuff like this. My dad was like, it's like life drawing, right? It's like, right, the kids draw all the time. Come on, they should see this stuff. It's fine. But I'm glad that they did, because the way Frank Frazetta can make such a still image have so much energy, like the poses he has and that stuff, we would look at that stuff fucking constantly from like when I was like 8 years old throughout the rest of my life. So by the time we got, and we're looking at that and drawing it, it must be sinking in, because even to this day I will get comments about how we pose our characters. Like, man, so much expression, such a shitty little chicken scratch you did, but I feel all of the energy. I think it's because of a combo of like growing up on Frank Frazetta poses and some of that stuff from Akira or Masamune Shiro. There's just an energy,
yes,
that even if it's a static image, it still conveys so much movement. I think that's ideal, especially if you're doing boards, because a single moment you have to sell it. Yeah. So, those I think are infinitely inspirational, at least for me.
Well, thank you, man. And any of the folks that are listening, pick them up. Yeah, dude, I'm so glad you brought up I've been doing this almost 2 years now. Actually, no, obviously you guys will be hearing this a couple weeks after. Today marks the day that I dropped my first episode. So happy anniversary, Brian. We popped this cherry together. But yeah, today marks 2 years. And this is the first time Frank Frazetta has ever come up. And I'm kind of bummed about it. Yeah, I'm kind of bummed about that.
We worship Frank Frazetta, dude. I've got more than one of his books, like literally like right over there.
Yeah.
We would not be the artists we are today without fucking Frank Frazetta. Hands fucking down. I mean, it was just so fucking inspirational. Like the stuff he did for the Conan covers, and and not only that, but like all artists owe Frank Frazetta like a huge debt, because he was the one that broke like the fucking ceiling, allowing artists to own their own work. Because back in the day, like if you did stuff for the cover of a book or whatever, like everyone owned. They bought it from you. You didn't have it anymore. And Frank Frazetta was like, "Fuck no, it's mine. Like I'm allowing you to license it to these books, and you pay me, and I'm keeping the fucking painting. And every time you print my fucking shit on your book, you pay me." And but because like his painting sold books, like it was the first time that you judged a book by its cover. Like people bought the books because they're like, this fucking painting on the book, and they bought it. So he changed the game, and kudos, fucking amazing that he did that, because like it literally changed how artists were able to be paid for their work. There was a time before Frazetta, there was a time after Frazetta, in regards to that specifically, which is great. The other thing too, I'm also a fucking, and this goes to like what if, maybe we'll talk about what if at some point, like on another thing, but part of the look of what if is because I love fucking JC Leyendecker.
Yes.
And his stuff is incredible. And he's another icon that also predates Frazetta, but I think Frazetta probably pulled a little bit from him as well, because he was the GOAT. He was like the #1 artist. He inspired Norman Rockwell, who basically aped his shit and then just took it to a different direction. But so yeah, I think the illustrative works of JC Leyendecker are also infinitely inspirational. So if anyone can find books on him, there was a big thick book about his life and his art that came out. I have that one over there. It's like, that one's fucking great too. And there's an awesome one that in Japan they printed one. It's a smaller one. I actually, oh yeah, it's right here. Sometimes you can find it on eBay, but this one is great. It shows so much stuff. It shows so much stuff through his. And speaking of kills, let me show you this one.
Holy shit!
But he's so good. Just because his art alone, but also because it was the golden age of advertising, like the early 1900s all the way up until like the late 30s and stuff like that, and 40s he was working. But his stuff was indicative to American pop culture, because football and Thanksgiving never went together until Leyendecker did an advertisement painting that put like a pilgrim and a quarterback, and he was the one that brought together. He's the one who designed the classic Santa Claus suit that everyone rips off. Everyone thinks it's Coca-Cola, but it was actually Leyendecker long before.
What the fuck, man? I've been lied to my entire life.
Yeah, and I that's what I think that's the case. So I could be wrong, but I think that's the case. And then also like how like Easter, how we celebrate Easter, and some of the decor, the fashion that goes with it, because he would illustrate these moments for the Saturday Evening Post on the cover, and it started to become a thing, and people wanted to emulate it. And then the ads he would do for shirts and suits and stuff, men wanted to look like a painting, like one of Leyendecker's men in the paintings, and women wanted to marry the men that were in the paintings. You know what I mean? He had such a hand. And apparently the famous novel The Great Gatsby
really
was inspired, the author, who I'm totally blanking on his name right now, so shame on me.
Fitzgerald.
F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
F. Scott Fitzgerald, the crazy parties that Gatsby was throwing was inspired by just hanging out with Leyendecker, because Leyendecker's place was a hub of fashion. Like the Roaring Twenties, the look of the Roaring Twenties was because of Leyendecker, because people wanted to look like the way Leyendecker painted his people. So he was setting the fashion stage, because he's like, this is attractive, I'm going to paint this. And then people would come out and people were like, I have to be that. And they would go do it. So he so important to American culture, and people just don't even realize it. Yeah. So yes. So find books on Leyendecker and consume. He's amazing. The other artist, one last one I'll give you was Gustave Doré, who's incredible. He was even before Leyendecker, and he was in France, but he was like mega super illustrator, and they would do woodblock engravings off his pictures, and they would print them en masse.
Mm-hmm.
So he's famous for illustrating like the Bible, and his images are full of like, it's all black and white, dark and shadow and stuff, and they're so theatrical that when movies first came to the screen, a lot of filmmakers tried to emulate Gustave Doré's illustrations and light the films like his illustrations, right? So like Cecil B. DeMille, all these guys, they're all just trying to make their shit look like his drawings, because he did them like 80 years before they made those movies, you know what I mean? So he's also incredible. So if you're looking for inspiration too, like that shit's great.
Beautiful. And we'll check that out. And the last one before we get to a couple of fans' questions here. And I intentionally stayed away from anything Marvel because I knew we'd go down a rabbit hole, and I wanted to save that one specifically for an episode. Because I'm a huge comic book fan. But this one's fun because this one is actually how I started to chase you down and try to get you on my show. Is the animation recommendation. This is where you get to throw out a name and say, hey, I think this person have fun on your show. Who should we reach out to? Who's your animation recommendation?
Have you talked to Andy Soriano?
I have not. No.
He did that new version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, Rise.
Yeah, and like I think there's one that's coming out right now, but there's this other one. He was involved. Seth Rogen. Yeah, but he did a lot of stuff with us on Samurai Jack over the years as well. He was awesome. I think he also would helped out with like character design and stuff. Yeah, he's awesome, dude. He's great, and he's doing a lot of good stuff these days too, because he's moved on. So he's like, directing things, helping produce things and stuff like that. So he's great. But also Paul Rudish. I don't know if you've talked to Paul Rudish.
I have not. He's been elusive.
He is very elusive. But if you could get him, he's fucking great. We love Paul Rudish. There's just so many. You've talked to a ton of the dudes.
Yes,
which is fantastic. Yeah, or you can talk to my old buddy Brian Larson. The guy's fucking genius. I love that guy.
Yeah, I've got him written down too. He's
fucking great. So I mean, there's no end to incredible people that you could be speaking to. You know what I mean? So that's great. And if you're curious, one of these days when we're talking about the Marvel stuff, talking to any of the artists that we have, like on What If, whether it's the old school legendary Paul Lasane, or if it's some of the new blood that came in, Cynthia or Christina, I'm sure they have younger. Paul has an epic career. The others have a young career, but just depending on what your interest is, you can hunt some of those people down and talk to them about stuff. But they're cool. I mean, hell, Paul was saying he designed the Eye of Sauron for like the Lord of the Rings movies, so it's like that's a claim to fame for sure.
What's on your resume? I created the eye. What eye? Yeah, I don't have to explain. I created the eye. Look me up. Google me, bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so fucking insane. But yeah, it's funny, the Marvel thing. So I showed my son Beetlejuice for the first time a couple years back, right? The old Tim Burton one. And I was watching him like just, out of the corner of my eye, I kept looking over, see what he was doing, see what he was going through. Because when I watched that movie at his age, I was blown the fuck away. I wanted to be in the makeup design. Rick Baker, Monster Maker, that was what I wanted to be when I was younger.
I love Rick Baker.
Something beautiful about like 2 hands, 4 hands, 6 hands, whatever it was, created that. Created the werewolf, created this, created that. I just thought it was fucking crazy. It was magical. This is what movie magic was. Then I get older, I get into other stuff, and I just didn't follow that dream. But I watching my son, and then after the movie was done, I was like, so what'd you think, Hayden? He was like, it was okay. I was like, dude, you're 9 years old. What do you mean that was okay? He was like, the graphics, the CGI just didn't look cool. I was like, first off, all of that shit was built by hand, man. None of that was done by a computer. Yeah. I was like, second of all, we just got done watching the Avengers at this time. I was like, not everything is supposed to look like the fucking Hulk, right? I was like, this is tactile. This was made by somebody. I was like, obviously somebody's back there drawing shit, putting it on this, I don't know, computer shit. They're doing it with computers. I was like, somebody physically had to make this from their mind. They didn't have any of these algorithms. They didn't have any of these software programs that'll help them out. They had to physically come up with this stuff. And all of this was just made just by engineering. And he was like, It's no Hulk. And then he just walked off, and I was like, God, this kid is infuriating at fucking 7 years old.
But it's true though, right? Because like he's seen so many other things that are totally beyond that level.
Yep.
So you can tell. It's funny too, because even I remember as a kid seeing the original King Kong, right?
Yeah.
And I still dug it, and I still love it. I had this big, massive King Kong comic book of the thing, so I knew what was going on in the story before we saw it, like on TV, kind of a thing. Anyways, but even at that young age, I had already seen some like Ray Harryhausen stuff on TV, right? So when they show those movies on TV, like Sinbad and that stuff like that. So I had seen stop motion done in the 60s versus the stop motion done in the 30s, right? So I was able to tell, oh, that stop motion is not as good as the stuff I saw, but I was still into the movie, you know what I mean? Like I was still able to be drawn into the story, you know, which was cool.
Absolutely.
I get what he's saying. I get it.
I'm hoping he'll come back around. This one, so this one's by Eight Legged Bird. Awesome. His name gets brought up a bunch in previous episodes, your name being the guy he's talking about. Question, which one came first, your interest in animation or your interest in martial arts? Also, how has each informed the other over time?
You know, it's funny. I mean, animation was probably first, just because before you even know what a martial art is, I'm watching like the old episodes of like, you know, I'm watching like Speed Racer or like Kimba the White Lion, or like Battleship Yamato, which at the time was called Star Blazers for us in America, and then, you know, G-Force, you know, Gatchaman. So I think I had a love for film and animation like from like infancy, right, to a certain degree. But in very short order, we started discovering martial arts. So we've been into that stuff for a long fucking time and just had no one to teach us. So there would be a thing called Kung Fu Theater that would be on TV here when we were kids. And we watched that stuff, and we would watch like the Bruce Lee movies and all the Bruce Lee ripoffs with Bruce Lee. Yeah. And it's funny, we were young, we try to emulate it and do it. It's funny too, because like, you know, they show him in some of those movies doing like training Wing Chun. Wing Chun dummy, and it's funny because my mom had this big piano in the living room, and we were kids of a certain height, and we realized, oh shit, if we like pick up the piano bench and put it on its lengthwise like this, it's tall, and those legs come out kind of near where, and we just like and just try to like use that as a wooden dummy. And then we'd put it back, and then over my mom would get on the thing and like, why the fuck is this shit? Like it's like because all the legs got a little bit used, because we're like, these little kids are like banging their arms on that shit. So, and then like when Conan came out, like I think I was fucking like 12 or something like that. Like I think that came out in 80 or 81, and then it hit the movie channel, cable channels, which we had like in 82. So we'd watch that shit, and all of Conan's sword stuff, they had a Kenjutsu master teach them. So it's all loosely based on actual samurai fighting skills, oddly enough, for like these barbarians, you know what I mean? And there would be a making of, and we'd watch that shit, and we learned all the moves, like the stuff when Arnold's out there, like when he's finally healed and he takes off the sword, he has that whole routine, and behind the back, we taught ourselves that whole fucking thing. And we had these like lead pipes, and we would use those as swords, and we did that shit. These skinny little scrawny kids, but we learned it like straight up to a T. So even before we had teachers, we had this fucking devoted love to all of that. And so I think at some point it became its own thing. And then therefore the skills I acquired, I was able to then bring back into you know, animation, like the Samurai Jack stuff, like the Shaolin Monk episode. I literally was just like, oh yeah, so all this, like the sword moves, all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, I was practicing that. I was doing that just like the other day. So here we go. I'm gonna just animate it, you know. And I animated that shit, you know, for that episode, basically, like in tiny little thumbnails, like on ones, just so to make sure that the vendor in Korea could at least hopefully get close to accurate, you know what I mean? And like they did an okay job, but you know, fuck, that was a lot of drawing.
I can imagine. It's funny. I wrote one article one time last year, and I used that episode as a example. Like everything you need to know about Jack, you learn in that episode. What it takes to be a hero you learn in that episode. He sacrifices everything that he had torn from him by leaving that portal and going to help those monks.
Yeah.
That is what a hero does. A hero lays everything on the line. The hero gives everything.
Yeah. It's not about, at that moment, it's not about themselves or what they want. It's about what's right for either the one or the whole. It depends on who they are that is they're sacrificing for. But yeah, that was a fun, great episode. I'd always been trying to get Gendy to like, yeah, man, fucking, we should do this fucking thing. I forget how it came out. I said finally, like, yeah, okay, let's do a Shaolin episode. Yeah, that was a great fun one to do, man, because we were able to like get some of that kung fu in there, which was awesome.
It was, and then seeing them come into the frame in the last episode, that was another, like, that whole sequence when they're fighting Aku, very emotional for me, man. So like I said, I really dug that episode. Florida Flamingo Girl wants to know, what's the main difference between choreographing animated action choreographing. Thank you. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing today. It's 2:15 in the morning. That's what I'm doing, and I'm too
drunk. I'm sorry, dude. It's late for you.
I was gonna be up anyways, and then I smoked a joint and had coffee, so I'm pretty good. I'm firing on all fucking cylinders, Brian.
Oh shit.
What's the main difference between animated action and real life action? And also, what was your favorite way in which you helped Jack flesh out the world of Samurai Jack?
Wait, what was the last one?
The last one, what was your favorite way in which you helped flesh out the world of Samurai Jack?
It's funny. That was a hard one to answer because like the premise of the episodes usually come from Gendy, and then he and I work together on that particular episode that's assigned to me to get at the details. So it's kind of like it's a back and forth, it's teamwork, so I mean all the episodes I was able to do, I feel are the ones I'm glad I was able to bring to Samurai Jack, like Jack and the 300, the Spartans.
Oh, that's such another beautiful one too.
You know what I mean? Like fucking love it. The ninja one, I did that one, and the assassins, the fucking assassin robots. Fucking love that one. And then, of course, the Blind Archer's my bro, and of course the Scotsman. So I mean, all of them have a little something, and then all the stuff we did in fucking, fifth season, like you said, like the Ghost Samurai. I can't even remember if that was even like an idea that Gendy had, or if that's something that I just simply did because we know we needed him to be haunted, and I think I threw that out there because I wanted to see a samurai in full armor.
I did too.
And we just put it, and I'm like, here it is. He's like, fuck yes. And then it just expanded, right? And then we're able to say, oh, and we're going to keep bringing that guy back, and that represents these things. It just started falling into place. So it's hard to pick one favorite that I helped bring to this, or like Jack versus the Zombies. Like that was fucking fun as fuck to do. I think I'm just glad I was able to do all of those and be able to have a hand in helping Gendy with this vision, but also B, get some of the stuff out of my system that I saw and wanted to do. Because whenever Gendy, I'm always trying to push it, And then for the other question, is there a main difference, or what is the difference between live action choreography and animated choreography? In my mind, there's really no difference, right? To me, choreography is choreography, but how you get it out is a little different. Like if I'm doing something, it's just me drawing it, or looking at some stuff for influence and reference or inspiration, going back to old fights because I watched a ton of Hong Kong fight stuff over the years when I was training and all that stuff, and we'd love that shit, right? And so going back to that stuff to see what some of the greats have choreographed before, and borrow some moves or whatever, and then sprinkle that in with your own imagination. So I mean, but when you're doing it for real, you're working with some stunt peeps, and you're able to like just get up and do it. You don't have to just like sit there and be like, oh fuck, now I gotta animate it like frame by fucking frame, or pose it out. So I mean, there's obviously that technical difference, but in the end, you're still trying to make it exhilarating. You're trying to make it feel maybe not like something you've seen exactly the same way before, trying to give it its own little spin. And everyone likes to say like, well, what's the story behind the fight, like and I get it, there needs to be a beginning, a middle, and the end. There has to be some ebb and flow, it has to be some flavor, but I think sometimes people can get lost as to what the story is. They're fighting over the thing,
Yeah.
and then you see it go like, well, that's one way to do it. I thought, like, for example, there's an anime, Sword of the Stranger, and at the end they've got this sword fight in it, and I think it's one of the best animated sword fights that anyone's ever done.
Was it new or old?
They looked at a lot of reference, because the one guy's supposed to be from China and he fights a little bit more like with a wushu style sword blade, and the other guy's like Japanese and he's got his thing, but the energy and the intensity, it's all there and it's all legit, and some of their cuts and choice of shots feel very like live action influenced. And I love it, because I'm like, oh yeah, you guys are nailing it. That's the shit I'm always trying to strive for, and look at you did it so cool. So I thought they did a really good job with that one. Yeah.
Is that a newer or older anime?
I think it's older, man. I think that was out like a ways back. I mean, that's old meaning it could have been like early 2000 to 2000s. I don't think it was in the 90s. I lose track of fucking time. I'm old. I can't remember. It all bleeds together at some point, but I thought they did a really, really fucking good job. So yeah, totally.
I have to give it a shot, man. Well, like I said, Brian, this has been a lot of fun. I'm so glad that we finally got a chance to sit here and kick it, because
man, I know it took a while. Sorry, but it's crazy.
Oh man, you're out here making fucking Marvel movies and making all of us nerds have wet dreams in real life when we get to see Marvel movies. So it doesn't matter what time it is. If I've got somebody that I want to talk to and they're willing to talk to me at fucking 3:00 in the morning, I'll be here at 2:15 waiting steadily for 45 minutes, man. So it don't mean shit. I don't sleep as it is anyways. But like I said, this has been a lot of fun, man. I can't wait to do this again for a part 2. If I always throw this option out there, but you don't have to. If fans want to come and say, hey man, I like what you do, are you on social media at all? You try to stay away from social media?
I'm actually not really. I kind of don't do much of that stuff at all.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. They can send some props to you, and then you can let me know. But or depending on, I don't know how many other questions you have, but if you get questions, like the same for next time too. Like, so if we are able to do a part 2, we can talk more about Marvel stuff.
Absolutely.
If there's still some Samurai Jack questions that come in or anything else, like, that's all good, dude. So by all means, and just keep it handy. And if it's a fun, cool question, I'm down. I'll answer.
Beautiful, man.
If I can.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, this has been a lot of fun, and we do have quite a few more Marvel questions. But like I said, I try to stay away from that one as much as possible, because I knew we'd go down a rabbit hole for Marvel. But like I said, man, this has been a blast. I'm so glad that we got to do this. I'm so glad you worked on Samurai Jack, because you were one of those people that breathed life into Jack, man. You guys made this fun.
I mean, thanks, man. I'm glad people out there. When 5th season was coming out and seeing how much people like really were like, oh fuck yeah, and that really, I can only imagine that it meant so much to Getty, but someone who's been with that show since the beginning, it's like, it meant a lot to me. I was glad that it had such a wonderfully positive response on so many people. So yeah, so to you and all the other fans who love the stuff, I mean, thank you guys for watching it, but thank you guys for also loving it. I mean, that's great, so yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man. Well, the thanks all goes to you guys, man. You guys work hard. You guys knock this show out of the park, man. Like I said, he's been Brian. I've been Julian. This has been a What's in My Head podcast, and this has been another piece of your childhood. Good night.
Right on, guys.
My guest next week created the greatest Nicktoon of all time, Mr. Craig Bartlett. Enjoy the teaser. I love doing this. But Tuck Tucker, when you hear that man's name, what's the first thing you think of? You got a funny story?
Yeah, he was such a practical joker, man.
Oh yeah,
he was just like relentless. He was, one of the things that you would say about an animator is they tend to be people who are in touch with their inner child. I mean, that seems like a really useful ability, to be able to conjure memory of childhood, and I really wanted Arnold to be about how childhood feels, and so. Tuck was like he had a whole lot of kid in him, and so the practical joker thing was just ridiculous. He'd get like he knew that people put up sign-up sheets in the on the bulletin board in kind of the community space at Nickelodeon in the big studio. And he put up a clipboard that had a pen on a wire, and it was one of those battery-powered shock pens. So people would go get it and write their suggestion and like, and he would like hide around the corner of the kitchens just so he could wait to see who was going to go for that pen. And he was delighted. He'd be like, "Oh my God, so and so shocked themselves on my trick pen." The other thing he did that is it seems apocryphal. It doesn't seem possible, but I even made a comic about it shortly after he died. I posted a comic about it. Was when he was so tired of people stealing his sandwiches in the same community space, the kitchen, the shared big kitchen, that he made a shit sandwich.
Jesus Christ.
And wrapped it up just exactly the same way and put Tuck on it and do not steal and all the usual shit that he did. And someone took the shit sandwich. And there were no more thefts of his sandwich after that.
I'm myself for asking, was it human shit? Was it dog
Well,
shit?
that's the question. He had a dog. He had a dog, Bruno, his hunting dog, who he would take hunting. I went out hunting with Tuck and Bruno a couple times. He may have used a Bruno shit. And I don't know. It's really, and I thought, did he put jam on it to make it look like peanut butter and jelly? Did he put lettuce on it to cover the shit? I do not know. That's the thing. It was like one of those things. We all knew Tuck could put out a shit sandwich and it stopped the problem. But I wish now, I mean, it was one of those things when I made that comic, I'm like, man, Tuck's not even around for me to ask these questions anymore. So he's become mythological. He was a incredible soul. Very, very talented. He worked really hard. I remember his office was always, he was just there working. Others might be milling around and shooting the shit with each other. Tuck was always working because he had stuff he had to do. He had really ambitious storyboards, and there weren't enough hours in a day. And watching him work was always cool too, because his forearm would be covered with black graphite from he was a very that kind of like active drawing where you kind of put your whole body into it. He was a very active drawer who really used his whole upper half to draw, and he wore pencils out, man. He wore them down to a stub. He was a phenomenon. Really cool person to know.